The first night it happened, the world stood still. It began as a quiet ripple across the stars, like a shiver in the heavens that only astronomers first noticed. A faint distortion, a line of light that bent when it should have been straight. No one panicked, until the ripple became a wound. The night sky tore open above the Pacific Ocean, and something enormous stepped through. It was not a comet, not a meteor. It was a fleet of silver and black machines shaped like blades and hammers, crossing into Earth's sky with a silence that made the oceans hold their breath. For centuries, humanity had feared the idea of alien contact, yet when the day came, there was no grand introduction, no peaceful exchange of greetings. The ships descended in silence and cities trembled beneath their shadows. The invaders called themselves the Vorash. They did not speak through radios or translators. Instead, their first message came through a single act, an entire island erased in a flash of white fire. Not conquered, not enslaved, simply removed. Fear spread faster than the fire. Governments scrambled, militaries deployed, scientists begged for more time to understand. But there was no time. Every day another place fell to fire from the skies. The Vorash were calm, methodical, unstoppable. They had faced hundreds of civilizations before Earth, and every one of them had broken quickly. Yet the Vorash did not know Earth's secret. They did not know that humanity's greatest weapon was not in its armies, nor its machines, nor even its science. It was hidden in a single man. His name was Elias Gray. He was no general, no politician, no famous scientist. Just a quiet man living on the edges of a coastal town. The kind of person you would pass on the street and forget in a moment. He kept to himself, working in a small observatory, writing notes that no one ever read. His eyes, however, carried a weight, like someone who had seen something far beyond the horizon. When the invasion began, Elias did not run. He did not hide. He simply watched. He stood on the cliffside, gazing at the massive ships blotting out the stars, and whispered almost calmly, "So they've finally come." Because Elias Gray was not like everyone else. He was Earth's last secret, an experiment no one spoke of. A man shaped not entirely by nature but by something humanity had once created and buried. Inside him was a weapon not of steel, not of bombs, not of fire, but something far older. Something that terrified even the scientist who had made it possible. Elias had never wanted to use it. He had promised himself he never would. But when the sky broke and the world screamed, the promise began to tremble. In the first week, the United Nations attempted peace. Messages were broadcast in every known frequency, every language. The Vorash never replied. Their ships moved like predators through the seas and skies, tearing apart satellites and swatting down jets as though they were insects. On the ground, fear turned to despair. Families packed into underground shelters. Children asked their parents if tomorrow would still come. Soldiers stood on the front lines knowing their weapons would do nothing. And yet, amidst the chaos, there were whispers, stories, of a man who watched the skies without fear, of a man who stood still as the Vorash burned the coastlines, his eyes following them like a hunter follows prey. Some said he was mad. Some said he was brave, but the whispers grew, and eventually they reached the ears of those who still carried hope. One stormy evening, as thunder rolled across the coast, a young officer found him. Her name was Mira, a soldier whose family had already been lost to the fires. She had heard the stories of the man on the cliffs, and she came with questions and with desperation. "You're him," she said, her voice breaking in the rain. "You're the one they talk about. Tell me it's true. Tell me you can stop them." Elias turned, his eyes calm, his expression unreadable. For a long time he said nothing, only listening to the rain on the stone. Finally he whispered, "If I rise, the world will never be the same again." Mira stepped closer, her fists trembling. "Then rise. Because if you don't, there won't be a world." And for the first time in years, Elias Gray closed his eyes and let the weapon inside him stir. The storm seemed to pause. The air thickened. And far above, in the silent fleet of the Vorash, something shifted, something that almost felt like fear. The secret of Earth had awakened. The following morning, the storm had cleared, but the world felt no lighter. The ocean was glassy, reflecting a sky where the Vorash ships hung like black scars. Humanity's warplanes, those proud symbols of nations, no longer dared approach them. Satellites that once sang to the Earth were now nothing more than silent ashes drifting through orbit. And yet on a quiet cliff, Elias Gray opened his eyes. Mira stood before him, her uniform damp, her spirit raw with grief. She searched his face for answers, but what she saw was not comfort, it was silence. Elias's gaze seemed heavy, like a man who bore the entire planet's burden within his chest. "What? Are you?" she finally asked, the question breaking the fragile quiet. Elias did not answer immediately. He walked to the edge of the cliff and looked at the horizon. The Vorash ships floated there vast and unbothered, as though the earth beneath them had already surrendered. "You know the stories of Prometheus?" Elias said at last. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of ages. "The one who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind?" Mira frowned. "That's a myth. All myths carry truth," Elias replied. "Long ago humanity tried to build something, not with steel or fire, but with thought, with the mind itself. We believed if we could push beyond the limits of human understanding, we could protect ourselves from whatever waited in the stars. But the moment the experiment worked, the scientists realized the cost. They buried it, hid it, locked it inside me." Mira's chest tightened. "You're saying they made you into a weapon?" Elias's eyes darkened. "Not made, shaped. But every weapon has a price. Every time I use what they gave me, something is taken in return." The silence between them deepened. Mira wanted to argue, to demand, to plead, but the truth was in his eyes. He carried power, yes, but also sorrow so heavy it had bent him into quiet solitude. Still, she thought of her lost family. She thought of children hiding underground, of cities burning, and she whispered, "Then let it take from you. Better you than all of us." And far above, within the cold metal halls of the Vorash flagship, the invaders studied Earth. The Vorash were not creatures of rage. They were a species of calculation, their bodies a fusion of flesh and crystal, their minds linked in a lattice of pure reason. They had crushed empires before Earth's sun had even formed. To them, humanity was a flicker, a brief fire to be extinguished, and yet something had changed. The lattice quivered. One of their overseers raised its crystalline face, threads of light pulsing across its form. "An anomaly," it declared. Its voice was neither sound nor word, but vibration shared through the fleet's hive. "A resonance has awakened on the planet. Familiar, dangerous." Others replied, their voices like cold chimes. "Explain." The overseer paused as though searching memory beyond memory. Finally it spoke. "Once, long ago, we met resistance unlike any other. A species that learned not just to fight, but to become. They wielded their own minds as weapons, bending the lattice of existence itself. We destroyed them, but not before they scarred us. This resonance, this man, it is the same. And for the first time since their arrival, the Vorash hesitated." On Earth, Elias Gray sat with Mira in the observatory as night returned. The building was old, its dome rusting, its telescope cracked from years of neglect. Yet it had always been Elias's refuge, a place where he could look at the stars without hearing the hum of what lay inside him. Mira paced, restless. "If what you say is true, then why wait? Why not strike them now?" Elias folded his hands, his eyes steady. "Because once I rise against them, there will be no turning back. The Vorash will focus everything on me. Earth will no longer fight as one species, it will fight through one man. And that is not strength, that is desperation." Mira's voice sharpened. "Then what do you suggest? That we wait until they burn every city? Until nothing's left to save?" Her words echoed in the dome, harsh and trembling. Elias did not flinch. Instead, he closed his eyes again. For a long moment, silence. Then he whispered, "Not yet, but soon. They will come for me. And when they do, that is when we strike." And come they did. The next dawn, the sky above the coast shimmered, and from it descended a single Vorash craft, sleek and vast like a spear of obsidian glass. It blotted out the morning sun as it hovered above the cliffs. From its belly descended a figure, tall, crystalline, its limbs sharp as blades, its eyes glowing with alien intelligence. It touched the ground silently, the earth cracking beneath its weight. It turned toward Elias Gray, and without words, the air between them vibrated. A voice pressed into the human mind. "You are the anomaly." Mira stepped back, her heart racing. But Elias only stood still, calm as the sea. "Yes," he said. The Varash's glow sharpened. "Then you will be erased." Elias exhaled slowly, and for the first time the weapon inside him opened its eyes. The cliffs shook. The air burned. And Mira Solon saw, with breath stolen from her chest, that Earth's secret was not a machine nor a bomb. It was the mind of a man who could unmake the unbreakable. The moment Elias Gray let the weapon awaken, the world shifted. It was not light, not fire, not thunder. It was something deeper, more primal. The air thickened, humming with vibrations too ancient to belong to Earth. Mira felt her chest tighten, her bones aching as though gravity itself had turned sideways. Even the ocean seemed to recoil, waves retreating as if afraid to touch the cliffs. The Vorash emissary froze. Its crystalline body flickered, lines of cold light racing across its form. For the first time, its lattice stuttered like a flawless machine confronted by a paradox. "You," the voice vibrated through Elias's skull. "This pattern should not exist." Elias stepped forward, calm, his eyes glowing faintly like embers in a storm. "It exists because we dared," he whispered. "Because humanity never accepted the limits others placed upon us. You destroy civilizations, we become them." The Vorash raised an arm, and from its crystalline hand a blade of pure energy formed, cutting the air with a hiss. It struck downward with precision, intending to end this anomaly in a single blow. But the strike never landed. Elias lifted his hand, and reality itself bent. The blade warped, melted, dissolved into threads of harmless light that scattered like dust in the wind. Mira gasped, her mind unable to comprehend what she had seen. Elias hadn't blocked the attack. He had unwritten it. The Vorash staggered backward, its perfect balance broken. For the first time, the invaders tasted fear. Not the fear of death, but the fear of the unknown. The high above, in the flagship orbiting Earth, the Vorash Council trembled within their lattice. "The anomaly has engaged," one voice resonated. "He unravels our constructs. Impossible. Impossible. Not impossible," said the overseer. Its crystalline glow pulsed like a heartbeat. "It is the old enemy reborn. The humans have forged a mind weapon." There was silence, long and jagged. Then a decision fell across the fleet like iron. Converge. All units. Annihilate the anomaly. And with that, the Vorash ships shifted. Their silent calm became motion, and Earth's skies darkened as the fleet aligned. On the cliffs, Mira's knees shook. She could barely stand beneath the invisible weight of Elias's awakening. How are you doing this?" she whispered. Elias did not look at her. His gaze stayed fixed on the Vorash emissary, whose crystal form was flickering, its blade dissolving into shards. "They built me," Elias said softly. "Not with machines, but with thought. My mind was opened wider than any human's should be. I see the threads of reality, not as laws but as possibilities. To the Vorash, their weapons are inevitabilities. To me, they are choices." Mira swallowed hard. "But what happens to you when you use it?" For a moment, Elias's eyes softened. "Every time I bend the world, a part of me frays. Memories unravel. Pieces of myself scatter. One day there will be nothing left of Elias Gray. Only the weapon." Mira's heart clenched. She wanted to shout at him, to stop him, to save him. But the ground trembled again, and above them the sky began to roar. The fleet was coming. The Vorash emissary raised its arms, summoning a spear of dark energy. But before it could strike again, Elias simply extended his hand. The emissary's body shattered, not into dust, not into gore, but into fragments of possibility that faded into the wind. The silence that followed was deafening. Mira turned to Elias, her voice trembling. "You killed it," Elias shook his head. "No, I unmade it. It no longer belongs to this world." Before Mira could answer, the heavens themselves split open. Thousands of Vorash ships shifted into formation, their surfaces burning with the light of annihilation. The sky became a ceiling of death, and the fleet's lattice spoke in one voice that echoed across the earth. "Erase the anomaly." The first wave of fire rained down. Cities trembled. Mountains shook. The ocean frothed with fury. But on the cliff, Elias Gray raised both hands. The fire met the air and vanished, not deflected, not absorbed, Simply erased like ink wiped from a page all across the world, eyes turned upward. Survivors in bunkers, soldiers on front lines, children in shadows, they all saw it. The impossible. The fleet's unstoppable fire, disappearing into nothing above a single point on the map. Hope, fragile and trembling, flickered back into human hearts. Mira's eyes filled with tears. "You're protecting the entire world." Elias did not answer. His body shook, sweat pouring down his face, his voice breaking as he whispered to himself, "Hold, Elias. Hold. Just a little longer." The Vorash fleet roared with fury, unleashing more fire, more weapons, more devastation. But time and again their power vanished, erased by the calm figure standing on the cliffside. And far above, deep within the Vorash Council, fear became certainty. This anomaly, this human, is more than resistance. He is destruction. Earth has made a weapon greater than war itself. But on the ground, Mira saw what the Vorash could not. She saw the cracks forming not in the sky but in Elias himself, his skin pale, his hands trembling, his eyes distant as if pieces of him were already gone. "Elias," she whispered, stepping closer, "you can't carry all of this alone." He smiled faintly, though his voice trembled. "Humanity has always carried the impossible. I'm just one more burden." And above them the sky screamed as the war for Earth truly began. The storm of fire above Earth did not relent. The Vorash fleet released wave after wave of annihilation, streams of light capable of melting continents. Oceans boiled, mountains split, cities trembled beneath shock waves that should have ended all life. And yet, at the center of it all, on the lonely cliff by the sea, Elias Gray stood with his arms outstretched. Every blast disappeared. Every spear of destruction unraveled into silence. To the watching world, it looked like a miracle. To Elias, it felt like drowning. The weapon inside him was awake, alive in a way that devoured his own humanity piece by piece. Each erasure cost him something, a memory, a thought, a fragment of the man he once was. He remembered his father's voice, then it slipped away. He remembered the smell of the observatory books he loved. And that too was gone. Still he stood, still he erased. Mira Solon clung to the earth behind him, shielding her face from the radiance of the Vorash weapons as they collapsed into nothingness above her head. Her voice was hoarse from shouting, but she tried again. "Elias, you can't keep this up, you'll destroy yourself." He didn't answer. His jaw was locked, his eyes burning with unnatural light. She saw the tremor in his hands, the way his knees threatened to buckle with every strike erased. But he refused to fall. Far above, the Vorash Council trembled. The anomaly consumes our fire. He is bending reality itself. "Not bending," corrected the overseer, "unmaking. We have seen this power once before. It ended an empire greater than ours." The voices of the lattice flickered with something the Vorash were not meant to feel: unease. If he is allowed to persist, we risk more than this world. He could unravel the lattice itself, the overseer pulsed. Then we must sever the source, locate his mind, penetrate it, break him from within. Back on the cliff, Elias swayed. His breaths were shallow, his body slick with sweat. And then it happened, his hand faltered. For the briefest instant, a lance of Vorash fire slipped through. It struck the ocean miles away and the sea erupted into steam. Mira's eyes widened. "You're fading." Elias staggered but straightened, forcing the weapon to roar again. "I can still hold them," he gasped. "Just not forever." Mira grabbed his arm, grounding him, anchoring him in the storm. "Then let me help. You don't have to carry this alone." A flicker of something human returned to his eyes. "You can't wield what I am, Mira." "Maybe not," she said, voice trembling but fierce. "But I can remind you who you are. If you forget yourself, you'll be nothing but the weapon. And the world doesn't need a weapon. It needs Elias Gray." Her words cut deeper than the fleet's fire. He looked at her, his lips parting as though to speak. And then the air around him cracked. The Vorash had found him. Invisible tendrils of thought, sharp and alien, slithered into Elias's mind. They pierced through the fog of his power, trying to unravel him from within. His body jolted, his scream torn from him as the Vorash lattice invaded his consciousness. Mira saw his eyes roll white, his hands clutching at his head. "Elias!" She caught him as he staggered, her heart pounding in terror. But within his mind, a battle unlike any on Earth had begun. Elias stood in a vast black expanse, a void lit only by strands of light stretching into infinity. Here the Vorash appeared as 1,000 crystalline figures, their voices joined into one. "Your mind is unstable, your power unsustainable. Yield, and you will be erased without pain." Elias clenched his fists, his voice echoing through the void. "You think I fight alone? You don't understand humans at all." And then he felt it, the warmth of Mira's hand on his real body, anchoring him across the divide. That simple human connection bled into his mind, reminding him of who he was, of what he fought for. He roared, and the strands of light twisted to his will. The Vorash lattice recoiled as the void itself bent around him. "You're not just fighting me," Elias thundered. "You're fighting every memory, every loss, every hope of an entire species. And we don't yield." On the cliffs, Mira felt the air explode outward, a pulse of invisible force that rippled across the sea. The Vorash fire stopped midair, frozen, then dissolved into nothing. Elias collapsed to his knees, gasping but alive. His glow dimmed slightly, human again for a moment. Mira knelt beside him. "You pushed them back?" He gave a weak nod. "For now. But they know me fully now. They won't stop." Her hand tightened on his shoulder. "Then we won't either." He met her gaze, and for the first time since awakening, Elias Gray smiled, not the smile of a weapon, but of a man who remembered why he fought. Above, the Vorash Council shuddered. The anomaly resists the lattice. He cannot be contained. Then we changed the strategy. Do not erase him. Break the planet around him. Burn Earth until the anomaly has nothing left to defend. The command spread like fire through the fleet, and as the Vorash ships turned their fury not on the cliffs, but on Earth itself, the real war began. The Vorash fleet shifted its purpose. No longer did their fire rain solely upon the anomaly. Now their weapons angled downward, toward the fragile veins of civilization. One ship descended over New Delhi, another over São Paulo, another over Cairo. Their engines pulsed with annihilation, not aimed at Elias, but at the billions he sought to protect. "Destroy the roots," the Vorash lattice echoed through its crystalline web. "Force the anomaly to choose his world or himself." On the cliffs, Mira saw the sudden change in formation. Her heart stuttered as she realized what was coming. "They're going after the cities." "Elias, they're trying to make you choose." Elias staggered to his feet, every movement heavy. His eyes flickered with faint light, dimmer now but still burning. I can't protect everything," he whispered. His voice cracked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff too high to climb. "Not all at once. If I stretch farther, I'll come apart." Mira grabbed his arm. "Then we'll find another way." "There has to be another way." Elias closed his eyes, feeling the hum of the weapon thrumming through him. It was like holding an ocean in his chest, every drop threatening to drown him. He saw the threads of reality stretching across the globe, each one tied to lives he could not abandon. "I can try," he whispered, "but every thread I hold tears another part of me away." Mira's jaw tightened. "Then let me be your anchor. Don't hold the weight alone. If you fade, I'll bring you back." For a moment, Elias looked at her, and in her eyes he saw something the Vorash could never comprehend: unwavering human faith. High above Earth, the first city was marked. The Vorash ship over New Delhi charged its weapon. The sky blazed white, a beam forming that could split stone and steel alike. Millions of eyes looked upward, their final prayers whispered in silence, and then nothing. The beam vanished before it struck, erased in midair as though the stars themselves had swallowed it. In São Paulo, the same. In Cairo, again. Everywhere the Vorash struck, the fire dissolved into nothing. Across the world, despair turned into astonishment. People emerged from bunkers, soldiers lifted their heads, children stopped crying. Hope spread like a fire of its own, unstoppable, uncontainable. For the first time in history, the entire planet spoke a single word: Elias. But hope was not free. On the cliffs, Elias collapsed to his knees again. His hands shook violently, his breath ragged. Mira caught him as he fell, pressing her hand against his chest, feeling the erratic beat of a man pushing beyond the limits of existence. "Elias, stop." You're tearing yourself apart. He smiled faintly through the pain, sweat dripping down his face. If the world stands one more hour, that's enough. That's worth me. Mira shook her head fiercely, tears brimming. No, don't you dare throw yourself away. We need you alive, not just your power. But he was fading, and she knew it. His voice was soft, his eyes distant. Then promise me, Mira, if I lose myself, remind me. Remind me I was human. The Vorash Council seethed. He shields entire cities simultaneously. The lattice cannot predict his reach. This is unsustainable, one hissed. Another pulsed with cold certainty. Then we accelerate. Collapse the planet's crust. And the anomaly not through erasure but through extinction. The command spread. Fleet formations shifted. Massive siege ships unfolded. Their bellies opening to reveal weapons that could fracture tectonic plates. Earth groaned beneath their shadow. In the observatory, alarms rang as seismic waves shook the coastline. Mira stared in horror at the data streaming across half-broken screens. They're targeting the planet itself, she whispered. They want to rip Earth apart. Elias pressed a trembling hand to the console, his glow faint but steady. Then they've made their final mistake. Mira turned to him, desperate. You can't fight them all? Not like this. I don't need to fight them all, he interrupted, his voice low but firm. I only need to strike once, Mira frowned. Strike where? Elias's eyes burned, though his body quivered on the edge of collapse, at the heart of their lattice. Their unity is their strength, break it, and they fall. Above the earth, the Vorash lattice pulsed with cold certainty, preparing to deliver a planet-killing strike. On the cliffs, Elias Gray rose one final time, Mira at his side. His body shook, his mind frayed, but his will burned brighter than any weapon in the sky. He lifted his arms to the heavens, not to defend this time, but to reach. Threads of light unfurled from his body, stretching beyond the atmosphere, beyond the fleet into the lattice itself. His mind pierced their unity, a single human thought colliding with a collective older than stars. Mira felt the air split, the ground quake, the sky fracture with brilliance. She held him tighter, whispering through her tears, Come back to me, Elias. Don't let them take you. And for the first time in their endless conquests, the Vorash lattice screamed. The Vorash lattice had never known resistance within its own mind. For eons it had devoured, consumed, erased. Civilizations fell not because of weapons, but because no single thought could withstand its chorus of endless voices. To stand against the lattice was to drown in infinity. But Elias Gray was not infinite. He was finite. One man, one life, one voice. And that was why he cut through them like fire. Within the lattice, Elias stood on an endless plain of crystal and light. The Vorash appeared as countless figures, each a shard of the hive, their voices echoing in unison. You are anomaly. You are contradiction. You will be undone. Their unity struck him like a tidal wave. Memories tore from him. His childhood laughter, his first glimpse of the stars through a telescope, his mother's lullaby. The lattice consumed relentlessly, stripping him layer by layer. But even as he staggered, Elias clenched his fists. You think I'm weak because I'm only one voice, he shouted into the void. But you don't understand. Humanity isn't strong because we think the same. We're strong because we don't. He slammed his hands together and light exploded outward. The lattice shuddered, its perfect harmony cracking as Elias's individuality pulsed like a hammer striking glass. On the cliffs, Mira held Elias's body as it shook violently, his face pale, his breath shallow. His glow pulsed in waves that made the observatory windows rattle and the ocean heave. She could hear fragments of words from his lips, names, places, memories, spoken as though he were fighting to hold on to himself. Stay with me, Elias, she whispered fiercely. Don't let them take who you are. Her voice reached him, faint but steady, anchoring him against the lattice's pull. Inside the lattice, Elias felt Mira's voice like a thread of warmth cutting through the cold expanse. He seized it, wrapped it around his mind like a lifeline. The Vorash pressed harder. You are alone. You are fragile. Your memories scatter like dust, yield. Elias gritted his teeth, his voice cracking. Alone, fragile? Maybe. But humanity doesn't survive because we're unbreakable. We survive because even when we break, we heal. Even when we fall, we rise. And when we're lost, someone always pulls us back. The lattice faltered, Its harmony trembled, a discordant hum spreading through its billions of voices. Elias's individuality, the very chaos the Vorash despised, was infecting it like fire through dry grass. High above Earth, Vorash ships began to drift. Their once perfect formations wavered as the fleet faltered, some vessels colliding, others losing their glow. Soldiers within the ship screamed silently as the unity of the hive splintered. On the cliffs, Mira looked up, her heart racing. "It's working," she whispered. "You're breaking them." But Elias groaned, his body racked with tremors. Blood streaked his nose, his skin pale as ash. The weapon inside him was consuming not just his memories now, but his very life. Mira held him tighter. "No, you don't get to leave us like this. You're not just a weapon. You're Elias Gray. You're the man who looked at the stars and dreamed." Her tears fell on his trembling hands, and somehow, impossibly, her words steadied him. Within the lattice, Elias felt the pressure of collapse. His voice was splintering, his being unraveling. But then Mira's voice echoed like thunder. "You're not just a weapon," and he remembered laughter. He remembered rain. He remembered her eyes the first time she asked him to rise. The fragments of himself that had been stolen ignited, fusing into something sharper than any hive. He roared, and the plane of crystal shattered. Vorash voices screamed as Elias tore through the lattice, unraveling their unity thread by thread. Where there had been one endless voice, now there were fragments, shards of individuality forced upon them. The hive was no longer one, it was many. And in being many, it was vulnerable. On Earth, the sky lit with chaos. Vorash ships collided, their weapons firing in disarray, some tearing into each other. The once perfect symphony of annihilation had become a storm of confusion. People around the world watched in awe as their invincible conquerors faltered. For the first time, the Vorash bled. On the cliffs, Elias collapsed into Mira's arms. His glow dimmed, his voice a whisper. "I broke them, but it's not enough. They'll recover. Their hive is vast, older than stars. I can't hold them forever." Mira's grip tightened. "Then don't hold them alone. Humanity has seen what you can do. You've given them hope. Let us fight too." Elias's eyes fluttered. He smiled faintly, weary and worn. "Hope is stronger than any weapon." Above, the Vorash Council roared in disarray, their unity shattering into panic. And for the first time in their endless history, the Vorash fleet began to retreat. But Elias Gray knew the truth. This was not the end. The Vorash would return, stronger, seeking vengeance for their first defeat. And when they did, the final price would have to be paid. The Vorash fleet was broken. Across the skies of Earth, their ships drifted like wounded predators, formations shattered, weapons firing wild. Some collapsed into the ocean, their impact sending tsunamis rolling across the seas. Others fell burning through the atmosphere, their blackened remains scattering across deserts and forests. For the first time in their long, merciless history, the Vorash had retreated. Their lattice, their unity, was fractured. Humanity had survived the impossible. And at the heart of it all, on a lonely cliff by the sea, Elias Gray collapsed. Mira caught him before his body struck the stone. His glow had faded, his skin pale, his breathing shallow. The weapon was quiet now, its hunger sated. But Elias looked smaller somehow, less like a weapon, more like a man who had given everything he had to give. "Elias," Mira whispered, her voice breaking. "Stay with me, please. The world still needs you." His eyes fluttered open. They were dim, but still calm, still steady. "No, Mira. The world doesn't need me anymore. They've learned they can fight." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But you, what about you? You're not just some experiment. I'm just a man," he said gently, his voice thin as wind. "A man who was asked to bear a burden, but now it belongs to all of us." High above, the Vorash remnants reeled. The lattice, though fractured, still existed. A voice, angry, furious, echoed across what remained of their unity. "This anomaly has scarred us. It must be erased even if the world burns with him." The fleet, though wounded, turned again. Ships locked into new formations. Their remaining power gathered for one final strike, not at the Earth, but at the cliffs. At Elias, Mira looked up, her breath caught in her throat. "They're coming. Every last one of them." Elias's body trembled. His strength was gone. He could not erase another storm. But when he looked into the sky, he did not flinch. "It ends here," he whispered. Mira gripped his hand desperately. "Then let me stand with you." He turned to her, and for a moment all the weariness vanished. A faint smile touched his lips. "You already have. Every moment you've kept me human. Without you, I'd have been nothing but the weapon. You saved me." Her tears fell freely now, hot against his hand. "Then let me save you again." Elias shook his head gently. "This time there's no saving me, but there's saving them." His gaze lifted to the horizon, to the billions of lives waiting, watching. "If I give everything, not just the weapon, not just the power, but all of me, I can collapse their lattice completely. They'll never come back." Mira's heart shattered. "If you do that, there'll be nothing left of you." Elias squeezed her hand weakly, his voice soft but firm. "There'll be memory, and that's enough." The Vorash fleet descended, weapons glowing brighter than suns. The earth trembled beneath their fury. Elias stood, weak, staggering, but resolute. His body flickered with the last remnants of his power. Mira stood beside him, refusing to let go. He raised his arms one final time, and then he let go of everything. And the weapon did not awaken this time. It unleashed light erupted from Elias Gray, not fire, not heat, but pure brilliance. It swept across the sky, across the fleet, across the lattice itself. The Vorash screamed as their unity dissolved, every voice torn apart. Individuality forced upon them like a flood of chaos. Ships shattered, crystals splintered, entire armadas collapsing into dust, and at the center of it all stood Elias. Calm, his expression almost peaceful. Mira felt his hand slip from hers. She screamed his name, but her voice was drowned by the roar of light. And then, silence. When the brilliance faded, the sky was empty. The Vorash fleet was gone, so was Elias Gray. When for a long time, Mira knelt on the cliffs, her hands empty, her tears unending. She whispered his name again and again, as though the wind might carry it to him. But all that remained was the sea, the sky, and the memory of the man who had stood between them and extinction. In the days that followed, the world rose. Humanity, once fractured, once hopeless, now stood united. No longer did nations fight alone. Now they rebuilt together. They remembered the man who had erased the invincible. They told his story not as myth, but as truth. Children looked at the stars and spoke his name with reverence. Soldiers carried his memory into battle as a shield stronger than any armor. Scientists whispered of him when they studied the impossible, and Mira Solon, though broken, carried his legacy. She became the voice that reminded the world that Elias Gray had not been a weapon. He had been a man, human, fragile, but unyielding. But years later, when the night was clear and the stars burned bright, people said they could still feel him. Not in fire, not in thunder, but in the quiet, in the calm of a man who stood against the impossible and did not break. The last light of Elias Gray, Earth's secret weapon, and humanity's eternal hope.